Fouke, Arkansas, a small, sleepy little town with a church, a school, and a local store. Fouke is also home to a nightmare. At times so real and so terrifying that some residents packed up and left in the middle of the night. Fouke is the birthplace of the swamp stalker of Boggy Creek.
I could see the muscles in his back.
Then I heard something walking up on me from behind.
He was in a state of near hysteria.
Very aggressive. I mean, it sounded like it was just feet away.
Broadcasting live from the dark and cold dungeons deep beneath the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada. Prepare yourselves to be taken away into another dimension, as we now have control over your thoughts, fears, and perspective of the unexplained world you dare not speak of. With your hosts, Lindsay Knight and Michael Knight. Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the gates to the paranormal and beyond.
Broadcasting live from the KLAV studios in Las Vegas, Nevada, this is the Paranormal and Beyond. When it comes to monsters, many will say that they are merely legends that have been made up over time by the wild imaginations of men, or that the only monsters that really exist are the ones hiding underneath our beds. However, there is factual and terrifying side to this coin, as reports scatter throughout individuals who's been in direct contact or even has been victimized by these unknown creatures, dismissing the theory of pure legend altogether. In a moment, cryptozoologist and author of books such as The Beast of Boggy Creek and The Lizardman, Lyle Blackburn, will be joining us on the program to take us behind the reality of the monsters that terrorizes the swamplands near Bishopville, South Carolina, and the beast that dwells in the city of Fouke in southern Arkansas. So get ready to believe, because Lyle Blackburn and Monsters is straight ahead when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas, KLAV 1230 AM.
Your ticket to the unknown is at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com. Knights with a K, ParanormalResearchSociety.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at KnightsParanormalResearchSociety.com, you're going to believe. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight, for the Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knights Paranormal Research Society.com.
Just because you've seen it in the news doesn't mean it's real.
So you're telling me you got physically attacked by a ghost?
Like, I can tell you right now, I believe in the paranormal more than I believe in our government.
There are so many mysteries out there that are still yet to be explained.
You folks have some of your facts wrong, and you just keep talking about generalities.
With all due respect, sir, you have not brought anything to the table to prove us wrong.
This is the Paranormal and Beyond, and it's your show. Call us at 731-1230. Here again, Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight.
Welcome back to another brand new edition of the Paranormal and Beyond. But first, be sure to check us out at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, where you can link up to all the past shows by simply clicking on that archive link above. That's Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Ever want to get into acting? Well, here's your chance. Log on to HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Again, that's HollywoodBoundActingAcademy.com. Special shout out to all those listening worldwide through the KLAV1230am.com website, and all of you driving around the Vegas Valley listening to us on your stereos. Special thanks to all those who came out to the Paranormal Activity, the Mark I screener. It was a great time and a great movie, the best. And give it up to Paramount Pictures for putting out, I would say, by far the best Paranormal Activity series out there. I'm your host, Michael Knight. Joining alongside of me as your host is Lindsay Knight and David Gleason of the EOG Sports Hour, joining us for his favorite topic because he used to live in South Carolina.
Yeah, I actually requested this topic, and it was when I was in college. People would sell Lizardman T-shirts at the gas stations in South Carolina, and it's been something people have been seeing there for 30, 40 years now.
When I think of Lizardman, I think of reptilians.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's there's been a lot of descriptions. Obviously, our guest will tell us all about that.
Yeah, we got a double bonus because he wrote 2 books. We're going to talk about The Beast of Boggy Creek, all right, and your favorite,
my guy, the
Lizardman in South Carolina. What is that, Lee County?
Yeah, which is a very swampy part of the state.
All right, let's get into it because our special guest, Lyle Blackburn, is an author, musician, and cryptozoologist from Dallas, Texas. During his research, Lyle has often explored the remote reaches of the southern United States in search of shadowy creatures said to inhabit the dense backwoods and swamplands of these areas. His investigated cryptozoology books, The Beast of Boggy Creek and The Lizard Man, reflects his lifelong fascination with legends and sighting reports of these real-life monsters. Lyle is also a staff writer and cryptozoology advisor to Moog magazine, one of the leading horror media publications in print today, and is a frequent contributor to websites such as CryptoMundo.com. He is featured speaker at paranormal and horror conferences across North America and has appeared on television shows such as Monsters and Mysteries in America and the CBS Sunday Morning Show. The Paranormal and Beyond would like to welcome to the program all the way from Dallas, Texas, Lyle Blackburn. How you doing, Lyle?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
All right, a monster hunter, huh?
Apparently, sounds like my bio is about as long as one of my books.
Okay. All right. First off and foremost, how did you get into this?
Well, it's one of those things, like a lot of people that are into these type of things. As a kid, I was just drawn to these topics of, monsters, Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, ghosts, UFOs, the whole thing. And, I just sort of been a backseat observer for many years, and at some point I had spent a lot of time hunting with my father here in Texas and camping in Arkansas and things like that. And I just started deciding I was going to, look into some of the stories of sighting reports and things like that. And being a writer, that sort of led to my first book, The Beast of Boggy Creek. So once I really started getting into the investigation and obviously once the book came out, then, it really just kind of became, engulfed in that whole world.
Okay, I want to first talk about the Beast of Boggy Creek. A lot of people are saying it's a Sasquatch, but yet the appearance and description eyewitnesses are giving make it look more terrifying with big claws and teeth.
Well, by the general descriptions, it's 7 feet tall, covered in hair, walks upright on 2 legs. But as often with these, Bigfoot-like creatures that exist in the South, which would include maybe the skunk ape or what they may call a swamp ape, they're often associated with more aggressive behavior. And they're often described as a little more menacing. The hair is a little bit longer. It's matted. The teeth, that sort of thing. So I think there is a more monstrous vibe to these down here. Of course, without, a body to compare. Is this the same as a Pacific Northwest Bigfoot, or is this something different, or is it an offshoot species? It's hard to say, but they definitely do have a more menacing description.
So we've talked about the citizens of Lee County, South Carolina. What about the monster? Just kidding. They were looking at me. It was funny.
Wow.
Michael and Lindsay were looking at me like I was, and as a South Carolinian, I can say that. But,
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm going to answer. Wait, what am I answering?
I'm just kidding. My ex-wife family lived in that part of the state, and I've spent a lot of time there, so I could joke about it. I've heard they like to damage cars. It seems like there's been a lot of reports of them like yanking the fenders off cars and whatnot.
Well, that's certainly associated with the Lizardman case. There was, at least 3 solid documented cases that the police investigated, and that's kind of how the whole Lizardman thing got started in Bishopville back in 1988. Is when the police got a call from some residents near this place called Scape Ore Swamp, and their car appeared to have been chewed up, basically, like mauled by an animal. And so while there was no direct evidence that suggested that the Lizardman actually did it, it did correspond to sightings in the area at the time, and the car incidents has continued all the way up until today. So it's an intriguing sideline of that whole case for the Lizardman.
Was that the incident where they showed it on the news, where that guy was talking about it? I think he had a blue Ford Focus or something, had claw marks, and it looked like it got basically attacked by something with claws.
Yeah, those later cases, because there was one in a couple of years ago, and those were obviously getting more news coverage, and with the Lizardman, it was always hyped up. And the bottom line is, even if that was to be explained by dogs or coyotes or whatever, it's just a weird thing. And just the fact that it occurred right in the very vicinity where these Lizardman sightings occurred, it's just, adds to the strangeness of that whole case.
Besides the vehicles being mangled, was there any carcasses or any human lives that were left behind, like mauled to death, that they talk about?
No, there was no, humans killed in the case, in the Lizardman case or the Falk Monster case. Now, when we talk about the Falk Monster, it's just across the border from Texas into Arkansas, and there was actually some reports in 1965 in Texas, which is maybe an hour and a half from Falk, in which somebody, some Army officials, said that he saw the body of somebody who had been killed by what he called a giant, hairy, man-like ape. So that'd be the closest, dead body to these cases.
Okay, let's get into, we're going to talk about the Lizardman right now and go right into your investigation, what you uncovered, what's your final assessment on this whole thing. You're closer than anyone to the story, so give us a quick synopsis of the story of the Lizardman itself.
Well, like I say, back in 1988, in the summer, the sheriff's department down in Lee County got a call from these people who said their car had been mauled, and the deputies went out there and checked it out and found it to be very strange. There was some footprints, and it did look like an animal had done this. So they called the sheriff, Liston Truesdale, and he went down there, and in the process of investigating this car situation, some people came up, and a lot of the locals began gathering around because there's police down there, and they said, well, maybe it was the Lizardman. And the sheriff said, what do you mean, Lizardman? They said, well, some people, over the last year or two have been seeing a creature down here that was either brown or green. It was, walked on 2 legs. It was maybe 7 feet tall, and we called the Lizardman. And so the police were intrigued by this. Of course, they, didn't think, this is a real monster. They thought, well, we better look into this. Something fishy's going on. And so in the process of that, they put out a call for anybody who had seen it. And several days later, a young man named Christopher Davis who was 17 years old at the time, showed up at the sheriff's office, and he had quite a strange story. He said he had a flat tire one night about 2:30 a.m. as he was coming home from work. He had to pass through Scape Ore Swamp. And as he was changing his flat, it was just about done. He was putting the jack back into the trunk and putting the flat in there, and he sees something coming, just enough moonlight he can see this thing, and it's coming up through the grass towards him. First he thinks that maybe it's a person, but as it got closer, it appeared to be some kind of an animal that, walked upright like a person. And, obviously it scared him, and he jumps in the car and tries to get it started, and whatever this thing was, jumps on the car and tried to, attack him. And he managed to speed away and get home, and his father was there, and he comes in, he's very upset, and when the reports of the car got in paper and the news of the Lizard Man, his father thought that he should tell this story to the police. So the police, did some, considerable interviews with the young man, and they felt that he was telling the truth. They weren't sure what he had seen or what had come after him, but they believed he had seen something strange, and that's how the whole thing got started. And then throughout the summer of 1988, there was quite a few other sightings down there in and around the Scape Ore Swamp vicinity.
Wow. There's another lizard monster called the Flatwoods monster that they call the Lizard Man. Is there any correlation to that?
No, I don't know why they came about calling that the Lizard Man lately. And in fact, there was a Monster Quest episode which they called it the Lizard Man. But the Flatwood case is quite different. The creature was not described as a lizard man. In fact, it was more of an alien type thing. It appeared to have big eyes, and it had its lower body was covered in clothing, and it floated above the ground, and it was seen in association with a UFO sighting in Flatwoods, and so it's two totally unrelated things, actually.
Well, Mike said in the beginning that because there's aliens that are called reptilians that apparently are around here in our planet.
Well, that's the story of the Flatwoods. It was like putting out mist and all this. And, doing the research for the Lizard Man, that came up too. So I had to bring it, if there's any correlation. But during your investigation, what did you uncover? I mean, speaking to witnesses and any physical evidence in the woods or in the swamps.
Well, what I did was a lot of Christopher Davis is dead, and a lot of the original witnesses have befallen some tragic fates. In fact, in my book, there's a little section called The Curse of the Lizard Man, which is some strange stuff. But anyway, I interviewed several witnesses, and I was also given access to all the police reports that were made at the time. And unlike most cryptozoology cases, this one actually had police documents. The police kind of looked into this in a serious manner because they thought, somebody could get hurt here, even if it's a hoax. So I was able to examine witness statements that were made at the time that people saw it. And what I concluded was that people, in most cases, did see something strange. And in a lot of cases, the descriptions were more like what I believe to be a Sasquatch. Some of them said it was definitely brown, and they thought it had hair. Only a few witnesses ever said they saw a tail on this thing. So in some regards, you had a little bit of reptilian description with some witnesses, and some witnesses, seemed more ape-like. And so, I wasn't sure that everybody had even seen the same creature, or perhaps the ones that described it as reptilian, maybe the Sasquatch was wet or covered in algae.
Yeah, that's what what was the Bigfoot expert we had on?
Cliff Bereckman?
Yeah, that was his theory. I asked him about it. He said he thought it might be a matted up, basically a dirty Bigfoot.
Yeah, and that,
which would be consistent with the one that lives in a swamp.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Right.
So, it's kind of crazy to explain one cryptid with another one, but I thought in this case that the evidence suggested that. And of course, I in my books, I try to lay out, what are all the possibilities? What are the theories that people have brought forth? And I mean, there are a lot of other ones, like if it is reptilian, is it some sort of an evolved dinosaur that's managed to escape extinction, and it evolved with more of a anthropomorphic humanoid body. Is it, like you guys said, is it a part of some reptilian race, and things like that? And those are certainly theories that are out there. But to me, it's like, even if it was, why in the heck would it be in Bishopville, South Carolina, near a swamp?
It wouldn't surprise me, having spent time down there. Let me ask you this: why, assuming it is, or it could be a Sasquatch type creature, why would it? It seems like it's much more aggressive than the ones you hear about elsewhere. What do you think would explain the fact that it's got a little more animalistic behavior?
Well, I always say, if I was 7 foot tall and covered in hair, and I lived in a swamp
in South Carolina, yeah,
in South Carolina or Fouke, Arkansas, I would be pissed off too.
There you go. Very good explanation.
Shoot me now, please.
Yes.
End my misery.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I'm I don't even like to. There's a few months that I don't go researching in the swamp, and that would be in June, July, and August.
Yeah,
it is very hot.
That's why I live out here in the desert, is because of the humidity in South Carolina.
Well, if you stand back and look at it, and you hear stories. We had Cliff Barackman, we had, Rick Dyer on the show, and they talk about how the North American Bigfoots, they don't attack you. They're more scared of us than, we are them. And but look at the property they own. Now you take one in the swamp, of course they're going to be mad. Always wet. Okay, here's the thing, Lyle. Like you said, you're not fully convinced it is like a lizard man, because you have the opportune moment and you have that to look back from different points of view, where you have an eyewitness who just sees it as it is. Oh, I thought I see this. It has to be this. So that's why I asked you that, your final conclusion, because you have that ability to take everybody's eyewitness account and put a puzzle together and make sense of it.
Right. Yeah, and I try to give credit to the readers. I try to bring them along with the journey. And the way the Lizardman book is written is a lot of discovery along the way. As I went out there, and I only decided to write a complete book on this because at first I was doing some research in various swamps, looking at different legends and sightings, and there just was so much to this Lizardman story, and it was so intriguing, and just the way it played out with, sheriffs investigating and all that, that I thought it was a great story, just as how I kind of got involved. And like you mentioned before, there had been people selling Lizardman shirts and all this stuff, and the drawings are just silly. Mm-hmm. And so when you first come across it, you're thinking, this is ridiculous. But when you start looking at it and you look at those police reports, you're thinking, wait a minute, these people saw something weird, and it's not comical as maybe some of the merchandising suggested. So yeah, I just tried to put all those pieces of the puzzle out there and see what sense we can make of it. And at the end of the day, I mean, ultimately it's just a great spooky story as to how it all played out.
Yeah, it's kind of reached the point in South Carolina where it's almost like a well-known statewide joke. They have like Lizardman festivals and sell T-shirts.
That's what I'm
kind
saying.
of like the aliens around Area 51 are now.
Yeah,
it's like that's just a marketing gimmick almost.
So do you believe, Lyle, that because of the myth going out, now everything that they see weird has to be the Lizardman? Mm-hmm. Because of that, it's burnt in to their mindset at this point.
In a way, yeah. I mean, if there's something in the news that is remotely strange, I mean, it could be a UFO sighting or whatever. Those writers have got to throw something in there about the Lizardman. So, once these things get established, you start getting a lot of things associated with the Lizardman that wouldn't normally be. So when I do these cases, I mean, it started in 1988. I go back and I look at what people originally reported and look at the, what originally came out, and that's more telling, to give you a path to follow than what you might read now, because it's just so tongue-in-cheek about it. But at the time when people were really seeing this and the police were totally confused and it seemed like something was trying to attack people, I mean, it was a scary story. And that's why so many people were down there. You know, I mean, it was just everywhere on the news, and, you know, Good Morning America was doing broadcasts at Scape Ore Swamp. I mean, it was just nuts. It's because people love a good spooky story,
Right.
you know.
With the Lizard Man, this goes, what, 30, 40 years back?
Yeah, 88, I guess that's 30 years or so.
So has it evolved since then? I mean, like into something else possibly, like in South Carolina, and has it brought a lot of tourism in there?
More like in this sense, like you said, you investigated the first reports. Okay, have you seen it? The story like evolve and totally just take, like, you know, he grew wings and stuff, and then it like totally morphed into something that wasn't what it was.
No, not really. I mean, I haven't seen the Lizard Man take on, you know, magic powers or anything, but I mean, it is. I do see posts, even in response to some of my book reviews, you know, that are positive book reviews and everything, but people will say, "Oh, I know who the Lizard Man is. It's this one guy. He said he wore a mask and he was scaring." And I'm just looking at this going, "Look,
Right.
I mean, maybe this guy said that, but." You know, and these are people who haven't read my book, so it's like I blow away all these nonsense. And I'm not saying that there couldn't have been a case where somebody was hoaxing something, because there was a few things that needed to be addressed. But, you know, it's just funny because people post this, and I know I'm the Lizard Man, I'm the Fouke Monster, I'm Bigfoot. You know, it's like, oh, man, there's no way that you know, one person could have orchestrated this whole thing. It's just impossible.
I mean, think
Yeah,
about
I know.
it.
Even dating back, like when I was in college, like in the late '80s, early '90s, you know, it was almost a joke then. Like, you know, if you heard a noise outside, and people would say, "Oh, that's probably the Lizard Man," you know, and it was just full on joke.
After a time becomes a vanity. But can you imagine somebody dressing up like, you know, like the Lizard Man out there? Which brings me to my next question. To this day, do you have people out there hunting him like they do the Bigfoot? Because somebody out there dressing like the Lizard Man could be his last Halloween, you know, costume.
Yeah, no, you don't have a lot of Lizard Man hunting. Now, I mean, in the case of Boggy Creek, since, you know, the Fouke Monster's more in line with the Sasquatch, you certainly do have investigation groups that go out into that area in Arkansas quite a bit. I go there quite a bit and, you know, actively pursue, and there's been many, many sightings of the Fouke Monster in that area over the years, and even, you know, half a dozen last year. So, whereas the Lizard Man, it sort of was you know, just a quick flashpoint. There was a lot of sightings, and, you know, it did become sort of tongue-in-cheek after that. So nobody's really going to look for the Lizard Man unless you're just doing a TV show and you're just trying to, you know, recap the story and things. So in that case, there's not. But in the Fouke Monster, certainly is. And it's the same kind of thing in Fouke, as to where if you live in Fouke, you know, or even people who saw the Legend of Boggy Creek movie in the 70s, even me, I live in Texas, you know, every time after that, if something spooky happened in the woods, somebody said, "Oh, you know, it's the Boggy Creek Monster." So it just like that, it becomes ingrained in the folklore of the area. And then you've got to go back and look at the original sightings to see where all this came from, and you find that, you know, it's based in real reports by real people, but it does evolve into this sort of folklore monster, you know.
Amazing. You know, I believe they are and is undiscovered species out there that we don't know. It's, I guess, like I said before, these guys are the winners of the biggest hide-and-seek game ever. You know, we can't find them, although they get spotted because of that vanity and all this folklore and myths and sightings that it gets clustered and nobody could really pinpoint and have an accurate description, because they're going to compare it to this, they're going to compare it to that. You know, and they're not going to say something different about it either. It looks like the Mothman, it's this, but they're not going to compare it to something different, like, hey, that's a refrigerator. You know, nothing where it stands out on its own. And that's the sad part about all this, and how, you know, you have a lot of people with cell phones, and yet when they do capture a picture or something valid, you know, you have the Photoshop and all that just ruins, you know, authenticity today.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the internet is a great way to share information, and there's a lot of technology on our side. Yeah, at the same time, it makes it easy to put a bunch of junk videos and hoaxes and nonsense on the internet that you have to wade through to see if there's anything good. I just almost don't pay any attention to that. I'm like, I listen to what my friends have, and if somebody I know is a credible researcher. If Cliff Barrettman came up with a photo, now I'm going to look at that. But if I'm going to sit there all day and on the internet trying to figure out something that could have been photoshopped, it'd drive you nuts, you know?
Oh, yeah, and it'll mess up your investigation. You don't know what to believe at this point. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to now jump to the beast of Boggy Creek when we return right here on the Talk of Las Vegas. KLAV, 1230 AM.
Let's hear your ghost stories at 731-1230. That's 731-1230. The Paranormal and Beyond continues after this. Join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight for The Paranormal and Beyond. Join host Michael Knight and Lindsay Knight as they investigate the unexplained and most controversial mysteries of the world. The Paranormal and Beyond, where the paranormal lives on and conspiracies exposed. The Paranormal and Beyond, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 p.m. to midnight. Brought to you by Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Your ticket to the unknown is at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. UFOs, ghosts, aliens, hauntings, mysterious places, and more can be found at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com. Knights with a K, Paranormal Research Society.com. Based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, Knights Paranormal Research Society is owned and operated by the renowned brother and sister team of Michael and Lindsay Knight. Seeing is believing. And at Knight's Paranormal Research Society.com, you're going to believe.
You are now in the mix with the Paranormal Beyond, only on KLAV 1:30 AM.
Welcome back to the Paranormal and Beyond. Join us at 731-1230. Here again, Lindsay and Michael.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we are talking with Lyle Blackburn. But remember to check us out at NightsParanormalResearchSociety.com to check out those dope past shows you missed if you were sleeping. Thank you again, Paramount Pictures, for letting us be a part. And we will see you for Paranormal Activity 5. And all you guys are watching the premiere right now around the world of the marked ones. Hope you enjoyed, because we did. All right, Lyle, let's get back to Boggy Creek now. Is the story similar in your investigation to the Lizardman, going back in history?
Yeah, definitely similar type of thing where, some sightings of the creature ended up getting printed in the newspaper, and that kind of brought forth some more sightings. But in the case of the Boggy Creek, the sightings that first brought it regional attention appeared in the newspaper in 1971, and it just so happened that that case was also sort of an attack, so to speak. Some people by the name of Ford moved to this little town of Fouke, Arkansas, which is near Texarkana, close to the border of Texas. And over the course of some evenings, something was approaching and walking around on the property and coming up on the porch, and one night it stuck a hairy hand through the window. And so, naturally, what do? You go to the landlord, you borrow a shotgun, and these folks ended up, confronting this creature on a Saturday night and taking some shots at it, and weren't successful at hitting it, but they went out to see, if they had, if there was any blood or any signs like that. And in the process of doing that, this young man, Bobby Ford, got kind of spooked and said, "Hey, you guys here, take the light. I'm heading back up to the house." And when he was headed back up to the house, something came around the side of the porch and grabbed him, wrestled with him, and he nearly jumped through the front of the window. And the creature was described as being a 7-foot tall, hairy, man-like ape. And the interesting thing about this is as the newspaper sightings ended up in the newspaper, some of the old timers says, "Hey, this isn't the first time we've had a creature like this around here." And in fact, there was a rash of sightings back in the 60s. There was sightings going back into the 40s. And in my investigation, I found some going all the way back to 1908, where it looked like they kind of started in the area, or at least they first were told. And in the case of Boggy Creek, it ended up being made into a very famous movie called The Legend of Boggy Creek, which came out in 1972. And this movie was literally like the Blair Witch or Paranormal Activity of its time, because it was a very low-budget movie. It looked very documentary. It looked realistic. The sightings were reenacted by real people who lived in Fowler, Arkansas. And the thing ended up making $25 million in the movie theater and drive-in circuit.
Yeah, and it was really, as you said, it was really before its time. I was a film studies minor in college, and we watched that film class because it was such a ahead of its time film.
Oh, cool! Yeah, that's awesome, because I think Charles Pierce, the director,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he does get a lot of credit with that type of thing. And in fact, Eduardo Sanchez, one of the co-directors on the Blair Witch Project, I mean, he loves that movie, and he's flat out. They said, "Hey, we want to make something like The Legend of Boggy Creek." So it's very influential going forward in horror movies, but it was such a pioneering movie at the time. And not only so basically it was scary. It was entertaining and everything else, but at the bottom, at the base of this, you had real reports by real people. And so it was an interesting thing, and I saw the movie sometime back in the 70s when I was a little kid in the drive-in theater. My parents evidently thought this was a good idea to take me there. Look at me today. But,
Thanks, Mom.
Taught them a lesson.
Yeah, no,
Hindsight being 20/20 and all.
Right. So I'm the Boggy Creek guy now, and went back and I wanted to know what was true about that, and that's where I got started on investigating the case and ended up writing the book. In fact, I couldn't believe nobody had written a book on it, because it's such a famous case, and I mean, almost every Bigfooter of a certain age cites that movie as a heavy influence. I was recently on the Animal Planet show, Finding Bigfoot. They did an episode called Return to Boggy Creek, and we went out there into the area and talked to modern-day witnesses and recapped a lot of the story. And it was amazing to see that, it was being brought to a new generation of Bigfooters, because it is such an influential film. And so, anyway, what I discovered is that a lot of people believe that the sightings kind of died down and ended in the 70s, because, it kind of came and went, and the movie was big, and, the newspapers moved on. But what I found that there was sightings that had continued into the 80s, 90s, all the way until today, and some of those sightings were more intriguing and shocking than some of the sightings that were originally reported. So,
Can you share, like, maybe two or some of the most shocking sightings that you can tell us?
Yeah, one that I think is great and doesn't always happen is a case where there was 6 people that saw it at one time. Usually with these Bigfoot sightings, if you're lucky if 2 people see it at once, but in this case, there was a carload of 5 guys, and this was in 1991. So if you lived in the area at this time, I mean, it's just like we were talking about. You know who the Boggy Creek Monster is. You're well acquainted with this, and, any spooky thing could be that. But so these guys are coming across this McKinney Bayou late at night, and there's a truck approaching in the other direction. And as the headlights start converging, they see this thing walk out into the road. At first they think it's a person, which this McKinney Bayou is, even today, I mean, it's not a place you're just going to be walking around at night. I mean, it's kind of out in the sticks, And they see this thing, And they get closer and they start slowing down. And at this point, they could see this thing didn't look like a person. It was very bulky. It appeared to be covered in hair. And, immediately you're thinking, oh, my gosh, laugh it up because this could be the foul monster. And so they stopped, and the thing walked off into a field and disappeared into the dark. And they all got out of the car. And I interviewed two of the witnesses in this case, which had corroborating stories. And, they tried to look out there, and they couldn't see anything more of it. And the guy driving the truck gets out. He's like, oh, my God, what was that? And they're like, haven't you ever heard of the Boggy Creek monster, Legend of Boggy Creek? And he wasn't from there. He's like, no, I don't know what you mean. And they told him what this thing was. And he just jumped back in that truck, and he hightailed it out of there. So to me, it was just like amazing to interview two witnesses from something like this, and a case where you had 6 people looking at it. Another good sighting, which I thought happened. It was kind of in retrospect, but there was a famous musician, Carl Finch, who played in a band called Brave Combo. They've won Grammy Awards and things like that. And he said back in about 1967, he was driving through this area, and he and his cousin saw something running on the side of the road. And as they approached, again, their first thought is, it's somebody out here jogging. But this is out here near the Sulphur River. It's very muggy. It'd be strange that a person would be jogging. And they thought he's wearing a fur coat, which is even weirder. And as they got closer, he's like, oh, my God, this thing is covered in hair. I don't know what this is. And his cousin who was driving, she just said, I'm not stopping. They swerved, and this is a dark 2-lane highway. And they went on by. Well, it wasn't until years later that he saw the Legend of Boggy Creek and thought, man, I think I saw that thing back in 1967. And the weird thing about it is this guy lived in Texarkana. He didn't have anything to do with the locals and all that. And it just so happens that right around that same time in the 60s, there was a rash of sightings by the locals down there, which is very well known and very well, documented through interviews. That people were seeing this thing. So you could say that all the locals were nuts. They were all drinking moonshine. You say whatever you want. But the fact that this outsider, a third party who had never heard of this creature, he had never even heard of Bigfoot at the time, the fact that he saw it right in the same area, how do you explain that,
Well, it definitely gives credence to, the whole sighting. You being a cryptozoologist, do you delve in other cryptozoology characters out there?
Yeah, most of my research is Bigfoot related, and primarily there's a lot of sightings in my area in Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and things like that. But, I've gone to Honey Island Swamp in Louisiana where the alleged Honey Island swamp monster lives. I've looked into some lake. There's not a lot of lake monsters in our area, but I'm familiar with most of the ones that are out there. There's a white river monster in Arkansas, and I've been out to Georgia where there's the Altamaha near Darien, Georgia. I definitely, look into the other cases. Of course, chupacabra. Call it what you will. There's reports of that here around Texas. So, I'm always getting somebody telling me about this or that. So I'm interested in all cryptids, really.
Listening to you and your investigation and going into all these 7-foot bipedal, creatures out there, seems like they're basically, it's one species, I would say, or different races. By the description, like I said before, everybody is just trying to, home in what they think because of their legend in their hometown. I could see if it was like the Loch Ness, but obviously there's a bipedal monster walking on both legs, scaring everybody.
Yeah, that is the question is, are these related? Are they, offshoots or different species that have developed depending on the environment, because a Bigfoot living in British Columbia living in the Pacific Northwest obviously lives in a completely different environment to one living in Arkansas, to yet one living in Florida, where the skunk apes have much more of a ape-like description. They're smaller. They tend to be more, ape-ish. So there's definitely slight differences in these things, but at this point, it's all just the best we can do by proposing some theories because we don't exactly have any solid specimens.
Okay, the one to be more distinctive in the whole cryptozoology is winged figures like the Mothman. Have you looked into that? Because that's a big separation between Bigfoot. If you're seeing wings on a hairy beast.
Yeah, I mean, those things definitely cross more into the paranormal realm because by physical characteristics, physiology, bipedal creatures such as man aren't really made to fly. So when you see something that looks humanoid that also has wings, it becomes much harder to explain. I mean, you can explain perhaps an undiscovered ape, but how do you explain something like the Mothman, things like that? But of course, you do have winged pterodactyl type creatures and just giant birds in general, which I would say falls. Falls into
like
cryptozoology.
The Aswang in the Philippines, or the most famous Phoenix sightings of the bird on fire. So those are more distinctive to its character because they're made to fly. So it's easier to associate than, like Bigfoot with a kite strapped to his back. it doesn't look right to fit into that whole theory.
Have you had any opportunity in all your research and all your searchings to spot or see anything?
As far as coming close to one and having, let's say, being close encounters of third kind to any of these creatures?
Well, unfortunately, I have not had a sighting that I could definitively say is an unknown animal. I've heard some extremely strange howls that, I hope or I surmise that it could have possibly been an unknown creature. I tried to compare it with all the known animals and the various strange sounds that they can and will make. So the closest I've gotten is just an audible sound, but so far no sighting. I don't know if that helps keep the intrigue or if I or what, but I keep hoping, but my point in doing all this, I find it fascinating. It's fun. It gets you in nature. I like spooky stories.
It gets you to the swamps.
It gets me to the swamps. I know.
Who doesn't like to hang out in the swamp? What fun!
Obviously, the Lizard Man.
It makes good stories. It's good stories to tell your friends and family. About the latest swamp you visited. But yeah, it's
chicks dig guys in swamps.
God, you are a
comedian
tonight, David.
Sorry, I'm a frustrated comedian.
He'll be here all week next week.
So, Lyle, is there anything new or related that you're actually working on in the near future as of 2014?
Well, I've been throwing around some book ideas, so I'm trying to get started on a new book project. I've been doing several TV show appearances over the last year. Like I said, I was on Finding Bigfoot. I'd been on the first season of Monsters and Mysteries in America. They'd have Falcon Monster episode. And then this season that just started in December, I'm on several, I think about 3 episodes of this. So, doing some TV stuff and then trying to decide what book to do next. Which is becoming increasingly hard because there's so much good stuff that I want to write about.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you this, obviously because the Bigfoot sightings are not just, here in the United States, but also elsewhere in other countries. Have you traveled anywhere across the globe to search for any bipedal Bigfoots or any other type of cryptoid?
No, I haven't done any research outside the U.S. for that. Now, I've done a lot of traveling. I used to play in a band, and we toured, Europe, and I've been everywhere from Slovakia to Poland and Germany. So I've been to a lot of these places, but I never have been there for the purpose of, searching for cryptids.
Well, tell everybody where they can get your books and email you if they've seen one of these beasts.
Well, a good place to start would be to visit my website, which is Lyle Blackburn, Lyle Blackburn.com. And there's links there that will take you to my books. They're available on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and all your favorite flavors is like Kindle, Nook. They're on iTunes in the ebook format. And you can also find more information and get autographed books on my Falk Monster site, which is Falk Monster, Fouke, monster.net. And that also has a lot more information there about the Beast of Boggy Creek, a.k.a. the Falk Monster. So, but yeah, just visit my website, lyleblackburn.com, and it will lead you where you want to go.
We're walking into 4 minutes at the end of the show. What is the weirdest, crazy, whacked out story you heard just to get your attention?
Yeah, you do run into some strange stories, Let's see, lately, and I'm always intrigued by these, anything described as a pig man. I recently, sort of a guy was telling me about a Falk Monster sighting, and suddenly he said, and there was this other thing, and mentioned this one man who said he had seen a pig man. And I said, a pig man? What do you mean? I said, did he have a man-like body with a pig's face, or did he have a pig's face on a man's face on a pig's body?
Either or.
Yeah, either way, I'm thinking pig man. And I don't know. He said it had a man-like body and a pig's face, so which was, boy, you're really getting strange there, a hybrid pig/human. I don't know, but I mean, it was kind of a crazy story, and it's not the only pig man story that's out there. In fact, I discovered there's some legends, I think, from Georgia where they called it the pig man. So I may have to look into this whole pig man thing,
A lot of pig men in the Las Vegas buffets, huh?
Yeah.
That's where you can find them all. But
that's right. I've been to Vegas, so yeah.
That's where you go hunting. Write a book on that.
Right.
Well, I almost got arrested out there. I was so drunk, laying in the street, and the police came up, and this was my friend's fault because he flew out there and he started buying me too much tequila, and the next thing you know, I'm in Vegas. What happens? And blah blah blah. And the police were like, "Can you walk, son?" I'm like, "Oh God!" So I stood up and I could walk, but I don't know how, and I barely have, I think, got out of there without getting a night in the jail. So
thank God you didn't tell him about all your stories. He would have definitely locked you up.
yeah. Hey man, but I can't walk, but I saw a Sasquatch.
Yeah, take him right to Bellevue. This guy escaped from the mental hospital. Ryan's having a good time with the dumps over there. All right, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and talking to somebody out there. Haunting. I'm always saying haunting.
Hunting.
Paranormal got me
Hunting and haunting. Yeah.
Hunting and hunting.
Red leather, yellow.
So the next time we hear from you, it's going to be the new book on the pig man, correct?
He's not going to go that far.
No.
I don't know. That's going to be book 4.
Well, thank you again for being on the program. We enjoy it, and I'd like to have you back again. And remember, everybody, go check out his website and buy his books and enlighten yourself on what could be out there. Everybody out there, have a safe weekend and enjoy yourselves. And once again, give a special thanks to Jessica Jones for being a boss. Inside joke that we all know.
Heard you took a tough bump other night.
That's just what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. All right, everybody out there, have a good weekend. Stay safe. Paranormal Beyond signing off. Good night.